Time to go back to a film that starred many legend actor veterans today.
Those were up, and they did.
More smarts, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review, and this review is going to be for a 90s cult comedy. This one starred a number of actors that are known to be phenomenal acting legends today. Back then at the time this came out, they were not, but this was the movie that pretty much launched them into the spotlight and made them really famous people. And that film is going to be for none other than 90s' Dazed and Confused. So what's the plot of this? Well, it's the last day of school at high school in a small town in Texas during the year 1976. The upperclassmen are hazing the incoming freshmen, and everyone is trying to get stoned, drunk, or laid, even the football players that signed a pledge not to. And keep in mind, guys, originally there's supposed to be a party at a guy's house, but the parents find out about that plan, they decide not to go anywhere. So they're forced to just roam around town and get drunk for their party. Now, how was this made? Well, when asked in an interview what he wanted to do after his other film Slacker, director Richard Linklater said he wanted to make this teenage rock and roll spree. He knew he wanted the story to take place on one day in the spring of 1976, but at one point it would be much more experimental. And the whole movie took place in a car with characters driving around listening to ZZ Top. And Lee Daniel, the director of photography, described the concept that how it would have been two shots, one of the guy putting in an 8-track of ZZ Top's Fandango, and one of two guys driving around talking, and the film would have been the length of the actual album, and you'd hear each track in the background as a source. Eventually, Linklater decided to write a script to represent different points of view, the first draft of which took a month to complete. Universal Studios fast-tracked production of Linklater's script, jumping ahead of 30 other films which were in development at that time. When it came to casting searches were done in Austin, New York, and Los Angeles. Vince Vaughn was almost cast as Bully O'Banion before Ben Affleck was ironically chosen. As Linklater even put it, that Ben was smart and full of life, and he didn't cast the unappealing person, you cast the appealing person. And other young actors considered for roles include Elizabeth Berkley, Mira Sorvino, Ashley Judd, Brendan Fraser, Jon Favreau, Ron Livingston, and Claire Danes. And casting director Don Phillips said that they wanted Claire Danes for the girl, but she was too young, she couldn't leave school. Renee Zellweger had a non-speaking role in the film, but it was originally considered for the part of Darla, which went to Parker Posey instead. And Linklater said that Parker was just crazier, and Willie Wiggins was the big find in Austin, according to Linklater, who described him as that 15-year-old with all the bad habits of a grad student. And some roles were intended to be larger, were reduced, and the Kevin Pickford character, who was played by Shawn Andrews, was meant to be a larger role, but because of his behavior with other cast members, Pickford's screen time was cut in favor of Matthew McConaughey's character, Wooderson. Linklater recalled that there was another actor who was kind of the opposite and wasn't really getting along with everybody, and he could tell the actors weren't responding to him. And Linklater had to break up a fight between Andrews and London at one point. And on screen, the two characters barely speak to each other during the film. Then Mila Jovovich, who played Michelle Pickford's girlfriend, had her role reduced because it didn't really gel well. So, after the film was shot and completed, Dazed and Confused would go on to be released to the public on September 24th, 1993. And upon release, Dazed and Confused was a commercial disappointment at the box office because it grossed less than $8 million domestically in the United States, but that didn't stop the film from later finding success on the home video market, and has since become a cult classic. And it ranked third on Entertainment Weekly's magazine list of the 50 best high school movies, and the magazine also ranked it 10th in the funniest movies of the past 25 years list. Now, as for my reaction, well, I had never seen this movie before, so I had never mentioned it before, But since you all saw I got this while I was away on my trip, I watched it while I was on my trip, and I have to say, this movie was honestly a blast. It's officially now one of my favorite comedies of all time and one of my favorite high school films of all time. Just every character in this movie was unique. O'Banion is the school bully, Slater the hippie who's always high, Mitch Kramer the innocent young kid who's just starting in the adult world, and Mike and Tony are the nerds. Wooderson is the guy who would always have hang with school students no matter how old he was, and Randall is Quell, such as Randall the kid who's running with a poor crowd, but has potential to go places if he just applied himself a little more, but has serious issues towards his peers. But what really stands out in this movie is the concept of high school initiation, which can be brutal, but it's a sympathetic understanding by allowing those students who are punished to attend the party in the end. And this is what the movie is highly based on, along with the drinking and drug culture that every generation has to deal with. Dazed and Confused has a lot in common with another movie basically called Fast Time at Richmond High, where the concept is a lot of future stars playing teenagers, have lots of terrific rock tunes on the soundtrack, and both derive laughs from the characters and situations and not their jokes, pratfalls, and other typical Hollywood cliches. One difference between the two films is apparently Dazed and Confused was a period piece. It was filmed in 1993, but it takes place in 1996. The director Richard Linklater does a marvelous job capturing the habits, the styles, and attitudes of the era. As well, and the movie seems to be personal to Linklater because it's not so much about plot or big scenes, but it's about realism and the overall flow. And it flows beautifully. The movie follows this group of high school juniors and another group of 8th graders next year, who are going to be next year seniors or French and freshmen combined into one, through the events surrounding the last day of school in Austin, Texas in 1976. And the whole film takes place in approximately 24 hours or one night. One entire night. So it's so much like the concept of Clerks, which both take place within 24 hours in a single day or a single night. We observe the hazing, the partying, some introspective banter, and many familiar rituals as the characters prepare not just for the summer, but for the next school year and beyond. This was the same general time period. This film was pretty relatable to a lot of 90s people, and you can see why it's one of the most talked about comedies of the 90s. And also, I think easily the best character in this film, though, is easily Wooderson, which was Matthew McConaughey's film debut before he became a huge star known today. There was another film he was in the 90s, a horror film that we don't speak of. I think you can all know which film I'm talking about, but this was the movie that really properly launched the spotlight, and to me, I just pretend this is the first film he did. Wooderson was this key character, who's usually a 20-something dude that still hangs with the high school crowd, and and the greatest of this film is that it rings so true, and the way the jocks party with the freaks or grits as they're often called during the 70s era, and the way they just aimlessly cruise around in muscle cars until they find out where the party's at, or the mailbox bashing, or even the bottle cap flipping. That was kind of a pretty big thing around that era. I wasn't around that era, but from what I've seen a lot of stuff, there was clearly a lot of antics like that in the 70s. And Dazed and Confused even explores the beginning of the 1976 summer from the very perspectives of the unusual group of characters instead of just one group. And just about every type is represented. It's like the timid nerd that's looking for a way to break out of his shell, the mindless jock, the overaged 20-something guy who likes hanging out with teenagers, the blonde bombshell, the stoned out of his mind pot addict, and the timing newcomer. Director Richard Linklater is only partially successful in his attempts to avoid making his characters into caricatures. And also what works with the youthful population of Dazed and Confused is due more to the performances of a fine cast and the writing. There isn't really much to this picture, the storyline is usually minimal, and the characters' personalities are as hazy as the marijuana-drenched atmosphere. What Linklater does exceptionally well is open the door to an era of 17 that was usually many years in the past by the time this movie came out. As this was for 1976, from the music in Cars to the people and their attitudes. It's kind of like you're going to a time machine when you watch this film and you see what the era was exactly like. What also makes Dazed work so well is it gets the look of the mid to late 70s just right, and particularly the hair and clothing styles. And secondly, the actors pull off the material very well. And a large part of the film's success is the excellent casting choices. You get a few up and comes here. Like others like McConaughey, Mila Jovovich, and Ben Affleck who have gone on to play in really big roles ever since this film. And there's one or two of lesser notes that we don't see much of now, like Jason London and Parker Posey. And the acting is good as well. Some of the actors who play the new freshmen could come off as a little meh, but the performances are propped up by the older teenagers who feel very real in their portrayal of young adults. And Wooderson also easily is still, once again, the best portrayed character. He usually provides many laughs throughout the film, despite not having a ton of screen time. A large cast of characters in the film can jump around a lot with a runtime at just over 90 minutes. And there's a lot that's crammed to the film. And I find that to be part of Dazed and Confused's charm. And I can see that while it could be a bit of a negative for some people, especially when some of the scene transitions are a little dated with every scene featuring some sort of rock and roll hit from the 1970s. And classroom scenes before school lets out are quite funny. Usually, because it's the last day of school, everyone is laid back, and from there all sorts of stuff happens. We have a great cast of characters to get acquainted with. And one more thing is that the movie takes place one very memorable day into nights. And all the standard school archetypes are... Yeah, once again, there's many of the perfect little school groups you have right here. And then you have the standard school experiences, like say at parties at a friend's house when the parents are away, cake parties, running from bullies, dealing with coaches and teachers, flirting, the possibility of sex, hanging out, meaningless conversations, fights, smoking pot at school, or your friend's bedroom, etc. All sorts of those things. Not only that, but I also feel like this movie has some many great iconic lines too, like, "You got a joint, man? No, not me. Be a lot cooler if you did." Or even a scene where the freshmen get revenge on Affleck's bully character O'Banion. Or even the beer cake scene when Kevin's parents find out about his party and he chooses not to leave the house as a result, which pretty much kicks off the plot of the film. Let's see. I can quote this the best I can, guys. It's been a few weeks since I watched this, but I remember, "Hey, Kev, did you order a beer cake for this place?" "No, what are you talking about?" Then he goes down and is like, "I think you got the wrong house." And the beer guy's like, "Oh, right, my bad." And then, "Hey, it's all good, man." And then Kevin sounds like, "You throwing a party night?" No." He goes back to his house. "How do you change your plans? We're not going anywhere." I think the beer cake scene was the best scene of the film. And even another thing, the iconic line, "All right," actually became an iconic catchphrase for McConaughey. Sorry guys, it's just that this film usually takes place in one night. So, it's not too much to say about this film if it takes place in just one single night or day. Because we have the typical stuff around that time. And the way the movie ends is perfect too, because we all know in the beginning of the film, the next year's group of seniors are preparing for the annual hazing of incoming freshman Randall Pink Floyd. The school star's football player is asked to sign a pledge promising not to take drugs during the summer or do anything that would jeopardize the goal of a championship season. And at class's end, the incoming freshman boys get hunted down by the seniors and paddled. Incoming freshman girls are also hazed, but in a different way. These girls actually get rounded up in the school parking lot by senior girls, and they get covered in mustard, ketchup, flour, and raw eggs and forced to propose to senior boys, and it kicks off the film's setting. Yeah. Another thing about this football guy that I've mentioned, Randall Pink Floyd, it actually is a relatable character. He's this football player, but also kind of wants a taste of the other, drunk life and stuff, and you kind of see that, and we kind of relate to him throughout the whole movie. There's not really much of a clear protagonist per se, but it kind of just varies from people to people. And how it actually wraps is also good, because after the whole movie, the party's starting to end, and as night turns to dawn, Pink, Wooderson, Don Ronslater, and several other friends decide to smoke marijuana at the 50-yard line of the football field. The police arrive, so they ditch the drugs, and recognizing Pink and Dawson, the police call Coach Conrad his football coach. And Conrad lectures Pink about hanging out with losers and insists that he sign the pledge. And Pink says they might play football, but he is not going to sign it. And so Pink leaves his friends to Houston and obtain tickets to the Aerosmith concert, finally deciding to get a taste of the actual high school life, and actually decides to have fun with the high school life before he officially grows up. He's like, because there's a scene where they're like, "I want to look back at my life and and know that I did this great thing. Here. And then, of course, the freshman of the movie, the main freshman character, Mitch, arrives home after sunrise to find his mother has waited up for him. She decides against punishment, but warns him about coming home late again. And Mitch goes to his bedroom, puts on headphones, and listens to Slow Ride by Foghat. And Pig Watterson, Slater, and Simon Kerr travel down a highway to purchase their tickets. And Mitch now has a taste of the high school life, as he pretty much decides to enjoy the rest of the summer, and then pretty much knowing that he'll now be in high school. It's honestly a perfect ending of the movie, where Pink finally stands up to his idiot coach and refuses to sign his boring waiver and enjoy the good times of high school while he still can before he graduates. And Mitch is now going to finally experience high school life. Now, if there would be a bad quality, it's, well, like I've already mentioned before, there's not much of a plot, because it's about high school kids' lives, and it's about a one-night party, them throwing a party, and that's kind of about it. But I don't think there's really supposed to be a plot in this film. I don't think there really was meant to be a plot. And it doesn't ruin the movie for me, because now I can call Dazed and Confused a timeless comedy masterpiece of the 90s. So in the end, Dazed and Confused is worth a watch and buy for those who enjoy high school comedy parties, and those that want to see the film that launched all these big news name actors and huge well-known stars of today's era. Anyways, that's it for my review of Dazed and Confused. You're wondering how I'm going to rank Dazed and Confused? Here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you love all these actors and want to see the film that made them famous, then I highly recommend watching and buying this movie for your comedy collection for sure. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Dazed and Confused, I'm going to give Dazed and Confused a 9 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for Dazed and Confused. So yeah, sorry I've seemed a little off on this review, guys. It's just that, and there wasn't really just much to talk about with this movie, because it's kind of just a one-night setting film, and it's just kind of not too much of a plot to talk about. It's kind of this typical high school day, or typical high school nights that was around the 70s. But it's still a timeless masterpiece. And I'm glad I finally saw this film while I was away. Until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.